Ever since Joe Biden stepped out of the race, Donald Trump has been off fuming. He's now running against Harris instead. And he keeps trying to will into existence that Joe Biden is actually not going to step out. So he said that Biden may crash the DNC and take back the nomination. Well, Biden didn't crash the DNC because he was invited to speak at the DNC. But you can see that Trump will bring up his Truth Social posts. He's just been flooding it with coup talking. Are you really gonna let them do this to you, Joe? You gotta stay in there. Well, that didn't actually happen. Biden was asked about some of this narrative. Here's Joe Biden.
No reaction to Donald Trump if you say it's out of the race.
I think he has a problem.
I think he's got a problem. I think he's got plural problems, actually. But anyway, with those theories from Donald Trump out there and the reporting that Joe Biden is like really mad, that he's still resentful of being pushed out, it was an open question of what sort of speech is he going to give? Is it going to be resentful? Is it going to be mad? And then also on the other hand, is he going to have the energy to really deliver it? That after all is one of the big concerns. Well, let's see how the speech actually went.
Too young to be in the Senate because I wasn't 30 yet, and too old to stay as president. But I hope you know how grateful I am to all of you. Because of you, we've had one of the most extraordinary 4 years of progress ever, period. When I say we, I mean Kamala and me. Selecting Kamala was the very first decision I made when I became our nominee. And it was the best decision I made my whole career. And like many of our best presidents, she was also vice president. I promise I'll be the best volunteer Harrison Waltz has Cam ever seen. It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more.
A storm is tearing up the digital media industry. Only our audience can save us in these difficult times. Help us reach our goal of 100,000 new members at tyt.com/team.
So that was like in a very real sense, it was not the speech he expected to be giving. It's kind of his farewell address, almost, right. Certainly on this scale. I mean, he'll probably speak in 4 years, God willing and all that. But what did you make of his speech?
It was long. However, I appreciated it. I just got a little bit emotional because I was telling you earlier that I watched from the press box and I was observing. I didn't get emotional with no clapping. I was trying to capture some of the things that he was saying, the elements of it. I agree with him. I mean, he has given it his all. And I heard him say that line, but last week when he and Vice President Harris were talking about prescription drugs at that rally, that he was too young when he was first elected. He wasn't quite 30 and now he's too old. And in between, he has accomplished so much. And I'm grateful for that. He went through everything. He gave us, what they've accomplished. And I love that he said, we did it together. By we, I mean me and Vice President Harris, and that she was the best decision. I was thinking about this today because I watched the hearings with Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas, and he mentioned that he made mistakes. He said that in his speech as well. And to me, that was a huge mistake and it took us 30 years to get to Me Too. It took us 30 years for women to feel like, I was talking to a young creator. We have a lot of the social media folks here who are, saying the things that I really was afraid to say for a long time, whether it was something happening at work or even mentioning abortion on stage as a comic. And so that was a big mistake, and I feel like appointing the first Black Supreme Court justice, who is brilliant, and I love what she's doing there, and I love that he appointed not just Vice President Kamala Harris, but now is opening the door, kicking the door open for her to become the next president of the United States. I think that he has definitely made up for this in my mind. So, and laying out the case of what he's accomplished.
Yeah, I think you're totally right to point that out. And we could do many shows about the different mistakes he's made and things that he theoretically could have pushed for as president, but didn't. And he's taken a lot of money during his career. And I'm no blind Biden supporter or anything like that. I supported Bernie in 2020, and I was one of the voices calling for him to step down. And so I have been critical of him for a long time. And we can have a debate about whether this makes up for it. But that said, he stepped down. That is a Very hard thing to do. Very few politicians would do that under any circumstances, and particularly this guy who's very prideful. Everybody says he's very prideful.
And he's Irish.
And he's Irish.
I'm Irish and Mexican, just full disclosure. So I get that, like, what you want me to go what? And do what?
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard to do.
Really? When you're that powerful?
Yeah, but he gave, and look, in the first half of his speech, for about, not half, but 30 minutes or so, he didn't really talk about Harris. He was mostly just talking about what he did. But again, it's a farewell address. So if he's gonna do that stuff, it's gonna be now. But then he did do some good lines. And that line about, it's the best decision I ever made, like, whether he actually believes that or not, that's a hell of an endorsement for a guy whose career has lasted more than half a century.
Yes.
And so I have no doubt that on many levels he's very mad. And when he's up on that stage saying goodbye and he looks out and he sees Nancy Pelosi, he's probably like, I want to jump down and throttle you. She's mouthing, I love you, Joe, while she was obviously pushing for him to step down. So it's emotionally complex.
Yes.
And his speech went too long and it started too late, which is not his fault. But that said, I think he did a good job. He can now ride off into the sunset of his presidency and then the sunset of his life. If she wins, he will have secured his legacy multiple times over, having defeated Trump in 2 different ways, saving us from more Trump. And I'm very critical of, I wish that he pushed for codifying abortion rights and pushing for a higher minimum wage. And the protections against democracy that they talked about would be their first bill. There's a million things that I wish he had done, but he's doing some good stuff now.
Right, and when I say that, it's not necessarily making up for Clarence Thomas, because clearly that has caused so much damage. It's at least moving towards untangling some of that. Whether it's a Chevron decision, we talked about that yesterday on my show, and the, as you mentioned, abortion rights, anything that has to do with consolidating power to the uber wealthy has to, and we see it in the way that they are buying Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, one mega yacht.
Oh my God, I can't.
Yeah. Well, so I'm not gonna be one of the people holding up a sign saying I love you, Joe, but thank you, Joe. I'll say
I love you, Joe.
There you go. Okay.
I teared up when we saw the Ospreys. We saw him leave, and I'm a fan. And for a lot of the reasons that you said, that you mentioned, and bringing us out of the pandemic when we needed it the most, he was there. And I know that a lot of folks said, well, he said he was only going to be a one-term president, and we can go back and forth on that. I'm glad it turned out this way. I was not one of the people pushing for him to drop out, but I was watching him every time he spoke, like, oh.
You were clenching for potentially
willing him to be, for it to go smoothly.
And look, I will say one more thing. So I think that there is a select upper crust of politicians that I think truly, really care about people. I don't think there are many people in that group. I think there's a lot of politicians that are just here for ambition and it's payday and glorification. And I think there are some people who are kind of in the middle, or maybe the middle top. I disagree with Joe Biden on a lot of what he has said and done in his career. But I do believe that to a higher extent than the average politician, he cares. Yeah. I don't think it always leads him in the exact right direction or whatever, but I think that he clearly does care, and I will give him that, even though I have disagreed with him a lot and I supported other candidates and all that.
Okay. It's like, by the way, did you see his daughter's speech introducing him?
No, I missed that. I was rushing back to the hotel room. I got there for Biden.
And Dr. Biden was great too. It was really wonderful.
I have to watch Joe Biden's speech. I did see right-wingers talking about how creepy it was that Biden hugged his daughter. Okay. And I didn't realize that the tens of thousands of times I've hugged my daughter this year, I was being a creep. I didn't know that.
I mean, have you seen when him with Ivanka putting his hands on her hips and now they're JD Vance wants to talk about how Governor Walz greets his wife by shaking her hand. It's very strange. Yeah,
you guys are so weird over there. You not realize how weird you are. I'm gonna go home. I wish I could be hugging my daughter literally right now. When I go home, I'm gonna hug her twice as hard, just despite all of you right wingers.
Yeah, and believe me, I'm glad that both my sons, 19 and 20, still want to hug me. So
no, I hope that mine does.
Yes,
we'll see. Members make a difference here at TYT. You help make the show happen, and we see you in the chat with your loyalty badge. Click the join button to become a member today.